And good day. We're coming on the air with breaking news about the manhunt in connection to the killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. New York City Mayor Eric Adams just saying that authorities found a, quote, strong person of interest in the case. It comes as 6 law enforcement sources tell NBC News that a man in central Pennsylvania is being questioned in connection to the shooting. We want to be clear, we do not know if the man being questioned is the same man police have been looking for, but we know he has not been arrested or charged as of now. Let's join that news conference.
Good afternoon, and I'm joined here today by our Chief of Detectives and the Police Commissioner and Chief of Department because we have a strong person of interest in the shooting that shook our city last week. CEO Brian Thompson of UnitedHealthcare was the victim of a senseless act of violence. Our officers have been working around the clock. Many of them did not go home to pursue this individual. It was crucial that we were able to remove him off the streets of America, and we were going to seek him out no matter where he was at the time. And so this is a strong person of interest. The police commissioner and chief of detectives will go over where we are right now in the investigation. He matches the description of the identification we've been looking for. He's also in possession of several items that we believe will connect him to this incident. How did we do it? Good old-fashioned police work. The chief of detectives and the police commissioner made the decision to release as much of a photo that we had at the time. We sent it across the country, and someone, a McDonald's employee, did something we ask every American to do. If you see something, say something, but most importantly, do something. And they did. And because of that, we believe we have a strong person of interest to deal with this case. I want to now turn it over to the Police Commissioner of the City of New York, Commissioner Tish.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Earlier this morning in Altoona, Pennsylvania, members of the Altoona Police Department arrested Luigi Mangione, a 26-year-old male, on firearms charges. At this time, he is believed to be our person of interest in the brazen targeted murder of Brian Thompson, CEO of UnitedHealthcare, last Wednesday in Midtown Manhattan. The suspect was in a McDonald's and was recognized by an employee who then called local police. Responding officers questioned the suspect, who was acting suspiciously and was carrying multiple fraudulent IDs as well as a U.S. passport. Upon further investigation, officers recovered a firearm on his person as well as a suppressor, both consistent with the weapon used in the murder. They also recovered clothing, including a mask consistent with those worn by our wanted individual. Also recovered was a fraudulent New Jersey ID, matching the ID our suspect used to check into his New York City hostel before the shooting incident. Additionally, officers recovered a handwritten document that speaks to both his motivation and mindset. NYPD detectives are en route to Pennsylvania as we seek to interview the subject further. This apprehension is thanks to the tireless work of the greatest detectives in the world, and of course, the strong relationships we have with our local law enforcement partners. On every level, local, state, and federal, we all serve the same public safety mission. And this case, which captured the attention of an entire nation, is another example of how connected we are and how important it is to work together, share information, and pursue every lead. For just over 5 days, our NYPD investigators combed through thousands of hours of video, followed up on hundreds of tips, and processed every bit of forensic evidence, DNA, fingerprints, IP addresses, and so much more to tighten the net. We deployed drones, canine units, and scuba divers. We leveraged the domain awareness system, Argus cameras, and conducted aviation canvasses. And our detectives also went door to door, interviewing potential witnesses and doing the good old-fashioned police work that our investigators are famous for. This combination of old-school detective work and new-age technology is what led to this result today. And we must also acknowledge the instrumental role the media and the public played in this case. The images that we shared with the public were spread far and wide, and the tips we received led to the recovery of crucial evidence. We should never underestimate the power of the public to be our eyes and our ears in these investigations. This is the third time in 3 weeks that a member of the public has seen something and said something and done something that led to a high-profile arrest. The triple stabbing homicide in Manhattan, the gunpoint robberies in Queens during which an NYPD officer was shot, and now this. Now, the case will continue through the criminal justice process, and while we are proud of today's accomplishment, we must, of course, remember that a family is in mourning. I want to again extend my sympathies to Brian's family, his co-workers, and all who knew him. Finally, I want to thank the women and men of the NYPD, especially our Detective Bureau personnel, with a strong assist from our intelligence analysts. We also thank the SAC of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division, Leslie Rodriguez-Bekshies. And I want to commend the staff of the Manhattan DA's office, and especially DA Alvin Bragg. He has been working with us 24/7 on this case, and I'm incredibly grateful for his partnership. I'll now pass it along to our great Chief of Detectives, Joe Kenny, who will provide additional information. Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon. As the Commissioner stated earlier, a male was taken into custody today in Altoona, Pennsylvania this morning. He has been identified as Luigi Nicholas Mangione. He's a male, 26 years old. He was born and raised in Maryland. We know he has ties to San Francisco, California, and his last known address was Honolulu, Hawaii. He has no prior arrest history in New York. Members of the NYPD Detective Bureau are currently traveling to Pennsylvania with members of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office to interview this subject. This case was brought to a successful conclusion based on the coordinated effort between numerous NYPD units, including the Intelligence and Counterterrorism Bureau, our federal partners at the FBI, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and of course, members of the Altoona Police Department in Pennsylvania. On Thursday, one day after this crime was committed, the NYPD released a photo of the shooter in this case. This picture was obtained by the NYPD during one of their extensive video canvasses. We took that photograph and we asked for the public's help in identifying this subject, and the public responded. Hundreds of tips began to pour into our hotline. Each tip was investigated thoroughly, and we began to release additional photographs as they came into our possession. The NYPD provided these photos to numerous media outlets. Local, national, and international outlets released the photo via television, print, social media, and online content. Luckily, a citizen in Pennsylvania recognized our subject and called local law enforcement. Members of the Altoona Police Department responded to the call, and based on their investigation, they notified the NYPD. This investigation is still active and ongoing. Thank you very much.
First, and then we'll. Mark?
I had a couple questions about the document that he was found in possession with. Can you go a little bit more in depth about those motivations that you mentioned? Was that CEO specifically named in that document? Was there anything more about him wanting to go after others? And also in that document, was there any indication that explains us how the level of detail that he went into killing him? Like, is there anything?
Like I said, that document is currently in the possession of the Altoona Police Department as part of their investigation. But just from briefly speaking with them, we don't think that there's any specific threats to other people mentioned in that document. But it does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America.
Over here, sir.
NJ?
Chief, was the suspect wearing a mask at the time he was spotted in the McDonald's? And also, criminal cases often have a linchpin. Can you point to a single linchpin that helped crack this case?
There's numerous linchpins in this case, in the fact that we've recovered an enormous amount of forensic evidence, an enormous amount of video, and once again, with your help and the public's help. So I really couldn't put it on one thing, but if I had to, it would be the release of that photograph from the media.
Dean?
You said he had a passport on him. Do you believe he was trying to flee the country? And also, are you still looking for any evidence in Central Park in regards to the bike?
We had divers in the water yesterday. That came up negative results. The passport, we don't believe that he was planning on doing any traveling at this time. We don't think at this point in our investigation, we don't think he was trying to flee the country.
The person at the McDonald's, were they buying food? What were they doing at that exact moment?
He was an employee at the McDonald's.
Right. But what was the suspect doing?
He was sitting there eating.
Will the suspect be brought back to New York and charged here, and when?
We're going to have to work that out with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office in Altoona, Pennsylvania. He's going to be facing gun charges there, and at some point we'll work out through extradition to bring him back to New York to face charges here, working with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office.
Anita?
Hi, Anita from the New York Post. I was just hoping to get more details on the capture itself. Did he put up a fight? Did he say anything to cops? And we've also reported that he published online anti-health care industry rantings. Can you share with us some of the services that he posted on?
We're still working through his social media. We're going to do a complete scrub of that. Preliminarily, like I said, he seems that he has some ill will toward corporate America, but that will all come out as part of our investigation. We're not done here. We're still going to be putting this together. We're still going to be working very hard to bring this to a successful conclusion.
And the capture itself, did he put up a fight? Did he say anything to police?
I don't have that information.
Oh, sorry. Can you elaborate on how he got there, the path he took from Port Authority and on the George Washington Bridge to Altoona, PA? Same
thing. This just happened this morning. We'll be working, backtracking his steps from New York to Altoona, Pennsylvania.
I was going to ask if we knew anything, if he took a bus to Philadelphia first and then somehow got to Altoona. But
We're still working on that. We're still working through that.
Brittany?
Is there any indication that anybody else was helping him from the inside, as far as tracking the CEO's movements?
Once again, we're still working this investigation very hard. It's not at its conclusion yet. That could come out during our investigation, but as of right now, we have no indication that that took place.
Chief, did he have any weapons or anything like that with him when he was arrested?
He was in possession of a ghost gun that had the capability of firing a 9mm round and a suppressor.
Joe?
Can you get into a little bit about the technical aspects of the investigation? I know you deployed an unprecedented amount of technology. You also activated the Sentry program through Intel. Can you talk about how that is going to play into actually building the case as far as cell phone and all of the other technical aspects of what you've done?
In this case, it really came down to technology was the use of drones in Central Park, and really comes down to the video canvas that we did. We used every source of video that we could collect, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours from hundreds of sources, and that helped bring this to where we are right now.
The gun is it believed to be the gun he used in the shooting? And there was some talk that it was a veterinarian type gun. Is that accurate?
No, as of right now, the information we're getting from Altoona is that the gun appears to be a ghost gun, may have been made on a 3D printer, the capability of firing a 9mm round. Obviously, that will come out during our ballistics testing.
Oliver?
Yeah, Oliver Barnes from the Financial Times. Do you have any indication how long this handwritten, is it a handwritten manifesto that you found on the suspect? And then also whether or not he put it online at all?
Don't know if it's online. As of right now, it's a handwritten 3-page document.
Chief, does he have ties to that area, and was he someone who you knew by name before his arrest?
We believe he may have attended college in Pennsylvania, but like I said earlier, he has ties to Maryland and California and Hawaii.
And you knew him by name before today. Was his name on your radar?
Excuse me?
Was his name on your radar? Was he someone who you had been looking into before his arrest?
No, we did not have his name prior to today.
Brent, does he have any prior arrests? I know there were none for New York City, but is there any prior arrests anywhere else in the country?
We have not come across any arrests in the country.
Chief, hi, how are you? On two things. On the ghost gun, is it something you're going to be looking into to see if he made it himself and can he make that himself? Or would he have to buy the gun the way it was?
No, once again, that'll be part of our investigation as we follow up.
I mean, obviously he's going to face murder charges, but is there any chance that he could face any other charges because he was targeting the CEO and because of his writings and other things that we're now finding on him? Federal charges or
that determination will be made by Alvin Bragg.
Yes, what connections does he have in Pennsylvania that you know of? And are they in Altoona specifically?
We believe he attended college in Pennsylvania.
Does he know anybody in Pennsylvania?
Wouldn't be able to tell you that.
All right, we're going to take one more question on the shooting, Marla, and then we're going to go.
Is there, you talk about the manifesto having said things against corporations, but specifically UnitedHealthcare, and do you believe that Mangione acted alone?
We believe at this point, our investigation is leaning toward he was acting alone. So, like I stated earlier, we're still working through the investigation. We're not stopping today. And as far as the manifesto, like I said, I don't have the complete details of that. It's in the possession of the Altoona Police Department.
We're going to shift to opt-out.
Yep. Good job, Chief. Commissioner, Chief Manager.
We have been watching a news conference being held by New York City officials. There's Mayor Adams there, but the headlines that they now have in custody someone they determined to be a strong person of interest in the murder of Brian Thompson. That's the murder that occurred in New York City last week on the streets early in the morning. It has launched a massive manhunt, but again, authorities believe they have found a person of interest in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Based on tips, police alerted to an individual who they believed resembled or might be connected to the person of interest we've been telling you about. I want to go to NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter. He's been tracking the story. Tom, what other nuggets stood out to you in that news conference?
Well, a couple of things, Lester. As we said on NBC Nightly News last night, now that they have a name and they have somebody who they believe is a, quote, strong person of interest, there's a lot of police work that needs to be done from here. That gun that he referenced, just to give people a sense of this, if they do want to bring charges against this individual, and he's not been charged yet, not been formally arrested, the fact that it's a ghost gun. So this is something that can be built. This is very concerning to law enforcement. I know you've talked about it on a number of occasions. A gun that can be manufactured at home using a 3D printer. And by making a gun like that and not having it registered, that does run afoul of gun laws and all sorts of federal and state statutes. So that's going to be the easiest way for them to bring charges. Ultimately, to tie him back definitively to this targeted shooting here in Midtown Manhattan, just 5 blocks from where we're sitting, they're going to need to match the gun ballistics. So when that bullet comes out, it'll leave a specific markings on it that are only tieable back to this particular weapon. So that's one of the things that they're going to look at. The other things that are in their favor, according to the reporting of myself and my colleagues, Jonathan Dietz and Mark Santia, 6 senior law enforcement officials say that when he was taken into custody, in his bag or on his person, they were able to find a fake New Jersey license. The same fake New Jersey license, these officials say, that he presented to that hostel in New York City when he went to stay there prior to this shooting. So that's a significant development. Again, same name, same photo, matching up to here. Also in that bag, you heard a reference to a passport. The passport was apparently accurate and was, in fact, in Luigi Mangione's name. And so that also helped them come up with a determination that this might be the person that they were looking for and that might be that person's real name. Again, no charges filed. We would anticipate them, if they are filed, to be filed in Pennsylvania later today or tomorrow. And then at that point, there would be an extradition hearing, which may or may not be waived. And then as the chief of detectives, Joe Kinney, said, he'll be brought back here to New York City. So more work to be done, but certainly the efforts of that worker at the McDonald's, after he apparently comes off a bus today from Philadelphia to Altoona in the center of the state, and he's there eating at McDonald's, and that worker spots him, picks up the phone, calls local police. They're there instantly, and they're able to find these particular items on here. We're now looking at video of that particular McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. That ability to find those items of evidence on him was just so crucial. Shortly, I think we're going to be able to, or at least at some point later today, be able to show a photograph of him having seen it, and if it is in fact authentic, it's a dead match for what we've been looking at, Lester. All of that means nothing from a legal perspective. Again, they need to still do the work and ultimately determine if they're going to bring charges.
And Tom, let me ask you about this handwritten 3-page document the chief of detectives mentioned that was found on the persons of Mr. Mangione. Do we know what was in it beyond this expression of ill will towards corporate America? Is anything specific we've heard from it?
Still working on some reporting on that, Lester, but it might tie, again, this individual back a little bit closer to this specific CEO. But those are some details that are still being worked out, and I don't want to get too far ahead of our reporting.
All right, Tom, stand by if you will. Let me go to Sam Brock. He joins us now from Midtown Manhattan. Sam, over and over again, officials stress the importance of people saying something after they see something, and that worked all the way along.
I'm so glad that you started specifically with that point, Lester, because one of the many remarkable revelations in this press conference is the idea that authorities did not know his name until today. Police had communicated the idea. They weren't sure what bus, if it were a bus, the person of interest, strong person of interest, took out of New York City, he even took. And yet by flooding the public airwaves with pictures, batches of pictures that came out each day, really for the last 4 or 5, we were able to get to a scenario in which a McDonald's employee in central Pennsylvania recognized this person that they presumably had seen on television or somewhere on social media and called police and had officers arrive at 9:15 this morning acting suspiciously. It was at that point, according to police, that person was taken in for questioning and they found the gun. And I want to give you some more context on that, or at least a gun that seems very similar to the one that was used in this crime. The NYPD, their elite scuba diving team, spent 2 days, Lester, combing through the lake in Central Park, trying to find this weapon. And additionally, as Tom Winter had reported previously, they also conducted searches near the GW Bridge, his last known sighting at around 7:30, just to try to find the weapon. So the fact that the weapon, or potentially the weapon, a very similar one, was found on this person of interest is huge, right? There's also the identification component of this, and the fact that it was the same name, according to police, that was on the fake ID at the hostel in the Upper West Side, matching the ID, fraudulent ID, that this person of interest had on their person. There's just a lot of coincidences, really, that are lining up there. I would also add, Lester, with respect to this question of whether or not this was a personal situation or an ideological bent, you certainly are hearing now a handwritten document that the police commissioner said speaks to motivation and to intent and to mindset. And you think back about some of the reporting over the course of the last week and the fact that you had 3 shell casings that said delay, deny, depose, potentially a reference to criticism of the insurance industry, the monopoly money that was found in that gray backpack in Central Park. And again, we still don't have confirmation whether or not that was the person of interest backpack or not, but all of these sort of ties seem to start to be overlapping as to whether or not there was some sort of ideological motivation for what happened. Again, a strong person of interest, in the words of Mayor Adams. No charges or arrests at this point. We're awaiting certainly more information on that front. But what Mayor Adams said was it was important to get the person involved off of the streets so they were not a danger to anyone else. And potentially that may be the case now.
All right, Sam Brock, thanks. I'll ask you to stand by as I bring in NBC News senior national security analyst Frank Figliuzzi. He's a former assistant director for counterintelligence at the FBI. Let me ask you about, now that we have a name, now that police have a name, will they be able to connect more dots, perhaps looking at social media?
Yeah, for certain. And I've already pulled up some of his social media. And again, we've got to be careful because you can't confirm the reality of what someone is posting, nor that it's actually them. But this person claims to have a master's degree from an Ivy League school. His X account is filled with deep thinking, a very bright individual, but yet seemingly a troubled mind. Lots of discussion of existentialism, the future of human society, the impact of technology on reshaping the human brain, discussion of morality and ethics and homicide. and questions of mental health and multiple references to mental health. So there's a lot to unravel here, but a troubled young man who, in his manifesto, we may find, I don't even care for the word manifesto, but in his writings that were found on him, we may find a motive that makes sense to him, but not necessarily to us. The other thing I'll note is he's being detained right now on the ghost gun charge. That's a temporary holder. He may ultimately stick with that charge, but of course he's going to get charged in New York City. The other thing, though, is depending on what's in that manifesto, Lester, U.S. attorneys will also take a look at the possibility that there could be some kind of domestic terror enhancement or charge here. There's interstate travel to commit homicide. That could be happening. Lots of interpretation of the manifesto will take place on the federal side.
All right, Frank, thanks very much. Let me go back to Tom Witter. Tom, on that note about some of these writings or perhaps things that point to the motivation in the case, how much will they need to put together before they can take the next steps and make an arrest?
Yeah, Lester, not a whole heck of a lot. I mentioned it to you before about the gun angle and the fact that that appears, according to at least to the chief of detectives, to be illegally manufactured. That's checkpoint number one. That probably at least gets him into a Pennsylvania court either today or tomorrow on those grounds alone. Even if he wasn't the person who ended up being the person who was charged in the shooting death of Brian Thompson, the CEO that we're looking at there, that would be a chargeable offense. From there, they will start to look at all the elements of the crime. And Frank Figliuzzi so well laid this out as far as motivation, as far as the types of evidence. Can they prove that he took this fake gun over state lines, possible federal issues there? All sorts of a wide, varied amount of evidence that they will look at to try and determine which way they go with charges. The shooting happened in New York City, specifically in Manhattan, so that it goes to the Manhattan DA's office. That'll be prosecuted by Alvin Bragg, who's been, of course, in the news the last several years for his prosecutions involving former President Trump. But as far as this case, this is the type of homicide, even though it's gotten the amount of attention it's gotten, the type of homicide that the Manhattan DA's office prosecutes day in and day out. And there's frequently evidence that comes from all over the country that is presented to those prosecutors, those ADAs, and they bring those cases. So from that standpoint, it's not overly unique. Certainly the amount of attention to this case is unique, just given the nature of the crime and the nature of what occurred here. And if in fact it was motivated for any reason involving corporate America, as you can imagine, Lester, and I know for a fact these conversations have been going on in major Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies, what needs to be done now? If people are out there that believe they can solve their problems with corporate America through violence, the same way we saw with people trying to solve their political problems through violence this summer and the 2 attempted assassination attempts on Donald Trump, for a society that raises some pretty troubling questions.
Yeah, did you pick anything up, Tom, in the news conference regarding the possibility or the threat that there could have been other targets? Some might find it curious that he didn't ditch the gun, apparently. The weapon was found with this individual.
He seems to be more careful, Lester, just based on folks that I've spoken with in the investigation. And all this will come out at some point. But he seems to have been very careful as far as what evidence he left behind. You know, that bag that was found over the weekend, the Monopoly money, does that really tell them a whole heck of a lot? Probably not. Obviously, it's just several seconds, we're told, where he takes that mask down that was so crucial to this case being solved, that individual at the employee at the McDonald's seeing him and going from there. So he might have had good reason to hold that weapon, believing for the reason that the chief of detectives laid out at the press conference, they'll do some ballistic matching here, and that should be able to bring it right back to him if he's the guy.
All right, Tom Witter, thanks very much. That is going to conclude this NBC News special report. We'll have the latest on this breaking story on our streaming network, NBC News Now, online at NBCnews.com, and a full wrap-up tonight on NBC Nightly News. I'm Lester Holt. Thank you for watching, everyone, and good day for now.